Thank you. Well, my topic this morning is titled My Life with Eli, but really, it's not really about Eli as much as it is about Eli's impact on my life, my wife, our children. We have 3 kids still at home. Turner, 17, Nellie Kay, 15. I tell her she's my favorite daughter. She's my only daughter. And then little Eli, who's 11. I don't know if you had a chance to, there's a little handout that there's the Welcome to Holland, which is something that people gave us when we found out we were going to have a child born with Down syndrome. And then our actual birth announcement, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I started this off when I was talking to Roger about a talk. I said, you know, I really love special things. I'm kind of a wannabe, so when I was in the Air Force in England and had the opportunity to see my very favorite band, who were typically playing to groups of 50, 60,000 all over the world at that time, Led Zeppelin, when I heard that they were going to play in a local grade school gym where there were like 200 or 300 people, I thought, wow, this is something. And they played for us for 3 hours. It was just, it was a room like maybe 4 times bigger than this. And then I was over there for 3 years, and every year we went to Trafalgar Square for New Year's Eve. You know, we always see Times Square. Well, 1 million people converge on Trafalgar Square every New Year's, and we were right in the thick of that, and that seemed pretty impressive. And then, well, that deal with Tommy Hearns, I was playing. We were lucky enough to go to the Bahamas for a little foray, and with my 3 older stepsons, we were out playing football on the beach and touch football with a group of guys. And I was probably, well, I was older than this guy, but I wasn't a whole lot older at the time. And that was when the drama in the Bahama was happening, when Hearns was fighting somebody and Muhammad Ali was fighting somebody. So there were all these fighters around too, with all the gold chains and all that. And so we're playing touch football on the beach, and this guy comes out and he wants to play football with us. And Hearns, anybody remember Tommy Hearns? He wasn't all that big, but he was tall and he was lightning fast, and he was a professional fighter. And he wasn't the scary guy though, it was the 3 heavyweights that he had with him that wanted to play too. Then we played, and everything was great. My buddy and I looked at each other, kind of that eye contact where these guys play with us, we're dead. We know we're going to get killed. And everything was fine until my son Eric downed Hearns 3 times before he got out of the backfield. And he threw the ball down, and I'm thinking, oh, we're dead here. And he said, dude, I got you. And he said, oh, okay. And his buddies all said, you know. So it was a very interesting experience. But like you, not all those unique experiences in life they stick in your mind, but they're not all necessarily good. Like, I was hitchhiking through Europe on leave with a friend in 1972, and that was when the Olympics were in Munich, you might remember. And we actually were on the Olympic grounds the day that the Palestinians broke into the Israeli Olympic housing and took them and kidnapped them, and then watched them go overhead in a helicopter out to Fürstenfeldbruck, the Air Force base, or the airport there. And then later that next morning, you know, they were all killed in a firefight. And I didn't really understand the impact of all that, because it was kind of oblivious. But the next day, as hitchhiking out of town, a young executive picked me up in his brand new Mercedes and gave us a ride. We were hitchhiking to Austria. He took us probably 50, 60 miles out of town, talking about the impact of that on the German people and how devastated they were, that here was their chance to prove that Germany wasn't like the old Germany that people remembered from World War II. So, different kind of experience. So how does all that tie in? Well, you know, I think when I look around this room, I see a lot of successful people. And I felt I was successful. I thought life was full. I thought life was about as good as it could get. And then about 12 years ago, well, actually, you got to go back further than that, because this story really starts about 18 years ago when my wife was pregnant with our 17-year-old son. And a lot of her girlfriends at the time were having these tests, these amniocentesis tests, find out whether the child was male, whether it was female, and in reality find out whether the kid was going to be 4 legs, not born with Down syndrome. And we were down at a meeting in Salem. We're driving back, and she's going back and forth. Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? And I can tell you exactly where we were when I turned to her and said, well, go ahead. I mean, it's still got plenty of time. And we were right across from where those outlet stores are now. And she turned to me and she said, what do you mean, more time? Enough time? And I said, well, you know, I mean, if I kind of mumbled around. Basically what I was saying is, if it isn't what you want, I mean, I was an Oregon kid. I was born here. I was raised in a church and all that. But basically, I was saying, you could scrub it. You could get rid of it. And she turned to me, and this was a defining moment in our relationship, and it really changed my life. She turned to me and said, you know, if God's going to give me a child, I'm not going to look at it and say, I don't like that, and give it back. It's my child. And that was a viewpoint that had never been shared with me before, really. I'd never been brought to the edge of that cliff and had to make a decision. And I made a decision right there, and it changed my life. I didn't realize at that time how dramatically it was going to change my life, but it did. And of course, Turner was born. He's now 6'2", 6'3", and 4-point student. And then Nellie Kay was born, same sort of test. And then one Friday night, we were down at the Mac Club, because we used to live over here in the West Hills and in the Wilson, Hillsdale area, and we'd go to the Mac 3 or 4 days a week. And on Friday night, our routine was to go work out, and then go down to the men's grill and have a beer. I'd have a beer, and I'd have 2 beers, and she'd have 2 glasses of wine. And she'd always drink that first glass of wine and half of the second one. And one Friday night, we were sitting there, and that glass of wine, the first glass of wine, she never touched it. And I said, and she's kind of antsy. And I said, what's the matter? She's kind of antsy. What's the matter? Finally, I said, look, just whatever it is that's bugging you, tell me. She reached in her pocket, and she pulled out this little plastic thing about that big around that had a plus in it. And she put it out on the bar, and she said, you better go buy that Suburban. And I said, what? No way. She said, way. We're going to have a third kid. We're going to, because, up until that point, I'd already said, I don't want any more kids. I don't want any more kids. Because I was 48 years old, something like that, 49. And I couldn't get the smile off my face. I just absolutely couldn't pull it off my face. I said, no way. And so that meant that we needed to look for a bigger house. And she'd been bugging me to get a different house anyway, because we lived on a hill about like that, and every time Turner played soccer and missed the ball, it went 3 blocks down the hill. I had to get in the car and go get it. So we started looking for a house, and we found, after 2 or 3 months, long story short, we found a house. It was a dream house for us. It was a flat lot, flat street, and it had a view. I wanted a view, because I'd grown up here in Portland, or in Oregon, and I'd never had a view of Mount Hood. And that was my dream, was to wake up in the morning and look at Mount Hood. Well, we found a house up on the top of the hill between Lake Ridge High School and Merrillhurst, an old development, and it had a view of Mount Hood and it had a flat lot. So you flash forward to the day before we were to move into our new house. I got a phone call, and Renee's crying, and she said, you need to come home. I got the test. And woo, okay. And so I went home. She said, they think our child's going to be born with Down syndrome. And so I said, well, let me talk to this genetic person. So we got her on the phone, and I can still remember, we're standing in our bedroom, and for whatever reason, she's on that side of the bed, and I'm on this side of the bed, and we're talking to this person. Maybe that's where the phone's reached or something. Anyhow, I said, well, what's the likelihood you're wrong? She said, well, we're never wrong. And then she said, you know, actually that's not true. We don't really know. Because 99.9 times out of 100, when I give people this result, they go get an abortion. So we don't really know whether our results are all that accurate or not. So I said, well, we're not going to do that. And I'm thinking, I think we're not going to do that. But so we said, what can we do? Who can we talk to? And all that sort of thing. But the long and short of that is that my wife sort of started crying. And the next day as we moved into our new house, she cried all day. She sat in the kitchen of our new house, she cried all day. And I think for the next 59 days, she cried every day. And I can't imagine, I think as a man, it's one thing to know that you've got a challenge coming up, but it's another thing for a woman who's carrying a child and not knowing whether this child's going to be, well, there are all, I mean, just like the people sitting in this room, there's variations in all of us, our strength, our intelligence, our athletic ability, our charisma, everything else. The same thing's true of a child with, or a person with a disability. There's a whole range, and not knowing what that range is and where you're going to fall in that range, I think had more impact on her than it did on me. And I was fine during that, really pretty fine during that whole pregnancy period of, I mean, I prayed every day. I mean, I wasn't a very prayerful guy up until then, but I got pretty clear on that. And I prayed for two things. One, well, I said, God, obviously, heal my child. You do miracles, you've done them. There's a book about all the miracles you've done. I just want one of them. I want you to heal this kid. And then I'll carry the banner for life, that he was supposed to be a Down syndrome child, and by God, you healed him. And, you know, I'll be a raging Christian out there, I guess. And, but if you decide that, I mean, guys, obviously that's your decision. You decide you don't want to do that, then just make him strong. Well, obviously, he chose the latter. We took Eli in. He has a little reflex where, I think we probably all have this, but he gets away with getting special care for it. A gagging reflex. He doesn't want to see the dentist. He doesn't want anybody sticking anything in his mouth. And so we took him up to a special dentist up at Dornbecker. And the doc they give him a general anesthetic. Well, in order to do that, they've got to do some stuff so they can start it and all that. And basically, it takes 4 people to hold Eli to get that IV started. And the doc said, what does this kid do? Does he lift weights or what? I've never seen a kid this strong in my life. So that's Eli. But we call Ron, stick your hand up. This is Ron, Ron also has a child just like, well, not just like mine. It's not quite as special as mine, but he's pretty good. We call ourselves members of the club. At first, it's not a club. It's not like the Mac Club where you want to be a member. It's first like, I don't want to be a member of that club. But once you're in that club, and you kind of get going a little bit, you realize, and that's really what my talk's all about today, is the experiences that child shares with you and the people that child touches are just phenomenal. So it's kind of like, people say, what's it like? I say, well, it's kind of like having, it's a book. Life is a book. Those of you that are not in the club like Ron and I, you have the standard book. We have a book that has more chapters, a lot more chapters. And those are sort of those special experiences. So we sent this, my wife Renee, she's the most amazing woman in the world. She put together this little birth announcement of Eli. We put that in our Rotary newsletter. And I'm in that Rotary Club downtown Portland. And the most amazing thing happened. For the next 60, 61, 62, 63 days, I don't remember what it was, but a couple of months, every single day, 7 days a week, we got something. A gift, flowers, a card, something, 7 days a week. We have cards from people we will never meet. Letters, I mean, phenomenal outpouring of love to us. And people who said, I have a daughter, I have a cousin, my friend has a little girl, one of my neighbors had a boy with Down syndrome, my neighbor had a girl, my cousin had a girl, whatever. And every one of them listed the impact that that child, that adult, whatever they were in life, wherever they were, had on their life and the lives of those around them. And that sort of started us on our path, sort of the path out of the forest. And you kind of have, well, my wife says that I'm too old, so they didn't diagnose this, but she says if you were a kid today, they'd say you were ADHD or, whatever. And I'm a very controlling person. I'm a very persistent person. That's probably why I'm a pretty good salesperson. And of all my kids, there's only one that's really controlling and really persistent and a little bit ADHD, and that's Eli. So God decided that out of all my kids, there's going to be one of them that's going to be like me, and it's this one. People told us from the time we found out Eli was going to be born with Down syndrome that we ought to get into sign language, because in order to really communicate with them, that potentially he could have speech challenges and he needed sign language. And I thought, I don't know, I couldn't understand that. None of my kids had any speech problems. I'd never met a kid with speech problems, so I kind of blew it off. And plus the fact that languages are extremely challenging for me. I took French in high school, and Mr. Mathiel was nice enough to give me a D. Otherwise, I would have. My wife picks up languages just like that. She picks up Spanish, she picks up sign language, etc. Well, it's kind of interesting now because Eli does have a speech problem. He's in speech therapy twice a week, and then at school, in private speech therapy and at school. And a long sentence for him has 2 words in it. And he's 11 years old. And if he talked to you guys, you probably would go like, what's he saying? And when he talks to me, I many times turn to my wife or my kids and go, you got to help me a little bit here. And he gets very frustrated with me because he knows hundreds of words in sign language, and he'll try to communicate with me and I won't get it. I'm like, Dad, anyway. So you would think it would be the other way around. Initially, when Eli got to be kindergarten age, we wanted him to be in our local school, which is Hallinan. So we fought with the school district. We said, he's got a big brother, a big sister. They're both in the school. Benton, Randall, Emily, all his buddies and peers are in that school. We want him to be with his peers. Well, that didn't really work. So after a year of that, we moved him over to Oak Creek, which is in the Lake Oswego School District in the Westlake Cruiseway 217 area over there, into an environment where he wasn't necessarily fully mainstream, but he loved it and he flourished. And now every time somebody comes in with a new child with any sort of challenges that may be in any kind of special program, the kid that they march out to show as their example is Eli. And he wakes up every morning of every day of every month saying, Oak Creek. Oak Creek. I want to go to Oak Creek. And when we tell him, no, you can't go at Saturday, he says, no, Oak Creek. He gets over that. The unfortunate thing for Eli is that kids with Down syndrome, or anybody with Down syndrome, flourishes in a situation where there's a very strict routine. Same thing, every day, same time, and we're about as a routine of family as a leaf in the wind. So that's a challenge for him, but that's all right. He survives that just fine. Give you an example of sort of the impact of Eli on us as a family. This Christmas, after Christmas, we went down to Puerto Vallarta for a few days and checked into a little, one of those all-inclusive deals, which I kind of don't like, but it turned out okay. And we weren't there more than about 45 minutes, and he was in the pool playing volleyball with a family from Minnesota. And he adopted himself into the family. He played volleyball with them. Then he adopted himself into this family over here, and he played something else with that one, and something else with that one, and something else with that one. It was really kind of interesting because when I got back to the office, I'd been gone for, we had the snowstorm, which we were out for 10 days, and we were out for Christmas, so I'd been out for like 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks. And I walked in, The only person I'd even told that I'd gone to Mexico was my partner, because I just had coffee with him the morning I got in. And I walk in the office and Jill, my partner's assistant, says, "Oh, you were in Puerto Vallarta." And I said, "Well, how did you know? I hadn't told anybody." And she said, "Well, I saw pictures of Eli on Facebook." Her college roommate was part of that family that he had been playing with and performing with. So we go to a Catholic church over in Lake Oswego. And any of you Catholics? Well, you've probably been to a Catholic church. It's pretty staid. It's pretty staid. And we don't have the most dramatic pastor either. So Eli loves to be up front. So for a while, we would sit in the front pew. Well, this only went on for like maybe 2 weeks, because if you're sitting in the front pew, there's no kneeler, and when you kneel at the altar, and when you kneel at the altar, everybody's looking at you. And Eli loved that, because he loves to be the center of attention. Well, that was great, and everything was going fine until he pulled his t-shirt up, started rubbing his belly. So now we don't sit in the front pew, we sit in the second pew. And he doesn't really like church. Well, and I don't know that he's alone in going to that church, because it's kind of boring for him. So Renee worked with the youth pastor to get him to be able to be one of the people that takes collection, takes little baskets down, and so he loves that. So he's pretty good, as long as he knows he's going to be able to do that. And he only likes to do it down the main aisle, because that's where the most money is, I think. Well, it's sort of an interesting, I think it shows how he sort of paints the world, because as he walks down, he comes down and he starts a basket up this row, and it's supposed to go down and come back, and then at the same time he's starting one in the next row. You know how that routine works. And people you see the smiles sort of start. And then somebody will like reach for the basket, and he goes, no, it's not you. You got to wait for it to come around that way. And then you see the smiles kind of go, kind of like God's hand, waving over the whole crowd, right? And then when they're finished, somebody brings the offering back. It's part of the Catholic Mass. It's part of sort of like you're giving your gift back to God, your tithing or whatever. You take the basket of all the money up, you put it on the altar. And so they walk down the aisle, and they stand in front of the altar until the priest kind of gives them the nod, and that's the time. And so they always let Eli bring it up and put it up on the altar. So he brings it up and puts it on the altar. And then as he walks back down, he kind of turns to the priest and goes, "Attaboy," which does this which is a good thing. So when you wonder what's the impact of a kid like Eli, I mean, when we told my mom, when we told a lot of people, our neighbors, the Wilsons, that we were going to have a kid, we're going to have him. He's going to be born with Down syndrome. And they said, "Oh God, that's going to be so hard on your kids. It's going to be such a challenge for you." When you look at my kids today, the two older ones, Turner and Nellie, they're phenomenal. Not a month goes by that somebody doesn't stop me somewhere in the city and say, "Your kids are so awesome. They're giving, they're sensitive, they're all those things you want kids to be." They are kids they're beyond their years in who they are. And some of that maybe is a load that they would choose not to have. But it's there, it's impacting them. And it's impacting their friends. Because when Eli walks through Lake Oswego, he's got buddies everywhere that have helped him in soccer. In fact, there's a group of teenage kids that have helped the Challenger soccer team that when they weren't included in Challenger basketball this year, they were really, really upset. When we finally did get them included, and I put some of the pictures up on Facebook, one of the girls emailed me that same night and said, "God, the one practice that I miss, we get to work with the kids." So it's phenomenal, the impact that he's had on our kids, other kids. And let me just close with one little story about, we have a group called DSNO Dads. Down Syndrome Network Oregon is a group that Ron and Paula and Renee and a whole group of us put together. We do a buddy walk every year. and we have a dad's group that gets together, because it initially started as a women's coffee group, mom's coffee group, and the dads, after about 4 years, said we want a group too. So we had a group 2 months ago at my house, 13 dads, and those dads, I was just amazed, because the subject of genetic testing came up, and mandatory genetic testing. And mandatory genetic testing basically means that we're going to turn into another place kind of like Holland, where there aren't any kids with Down syndrome anymore, because it becomes sort of that, the norm is kids like Eli won't be around. And Eli is probably the easiest Down syndrome kid or kid born with Down syndrome that you'll ever run into. He hasn't had any heart problems, he has very little challenges in his life. And there were dads in that room there's one dad, the dad that spoke that night, his daughter was born at 1 pound 3 ounces. And it was 3 months before she got out of the hospital, and they feed her 4 times a day through a tube. And I mean, every time we talked about something, I thought, oh my God, that load is getting higher and harder and harder. And yet, it was very, very clear. There wasn't a single dad in that room that wasn't incensed by the fact that somebody didn't think their child was worthy, that their child didn't bring incredible value to this world. So the bottom line with Eli is he's a pain in the neck. But the bottom line with me is I'm a pain in the neck. The bottom line with every single person in this room is that you bring value and you bring heartache. You make some people happy, you make some people sad. Hopefully, at the end of today, when you put your head on your pillow, you'd have made more people happy than you've made sad. You've added more to our society than you've taken away. And I guarantee you that if you meet my son, he'll put more on that pillow than he'll take away. So thank you very much. Sure. Any questions?
Do you also use your support network to find or seek out families who are just finding out about the upcoming birth of a Down syndrome child to share experiences?
I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question. And the question is, I'm sorry. Do you mind repeating the question for me?
Well, do we have support services for families who are just finding out, like we did, that we were going to have a child with Down syndrome? Actually, about 3 years ago, we applied to the Dickinson Family Foundation for a grant for what we call a program that we call Basket of Hope. And maybe it was 4 years ago now, I'm not sure. But at any rate, we were given this grant. Actually, we asked them for $6,875 to fund a program for 1 year where we'd actually take a basket and put in it Gene Stallings' book, second season. Gene Stallings was the Alabama coach that won the national championship when he was coach at Alabama, and his son Johnny, who passed away this year actually. 4 kids, one of them. I mean, imagine being a football coach. He was a national champion football player, football coach of a national champion, football coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and he has one kid born with Down syndrome. Anyhow, he talked about the very positive aspects of that on his life and how it impacted not only his life, but all the lives around him. So that's in the basket. We do Blueberry Shoes, a video about the first 18 months of a child's life. We put our brochure, contact for people that you can call right now, et cetera, and we hand deliver that. We have a committee that hand delivers those, and they deliver 1 or 2 a week, probably, probably 3 a month, I would guess, on an average basis. But anyhow, we asked for $6,875 for the Dickinson Family Foundation. They gave us $10,000. And by the way, we still have $4,000 of that in the bank. So we're great stewards. Down Syndrome Network Oregon. Go ahead.
Political assassination aside, did the experience of Sarah Palin in recent months affect positively or negatively the people's awareness or reaction to Down syndrome children?
Did Sarah Palin have and her choice of keeping her child have a positive or negative impact? Had an incredible impact. Absolutely incredible impact. Somebody who's standing up, I mean, when I open up the Oregonian and I read about Jessica somebody who's having her third divorce, or this or that or the other thing, or some athlete that's doing something bad, and then, I mean, all those things, the fact that in that spectrum of all those people that are in front of us in media every day, there's one person who stands up and says, I made the same choice that you did. And I believe the same thing. They're for the same reasons. And I don't know whether she's qualified or not qualified, and I don't really care whether she's Democrat or Republican. The fact that she chose to keep that kid, because I know, just like Ron knows, and I didn't ask but the rest of you if you have family members with a disability, and it isn't necessarily Down syndrome or autism. It could be any number of things, but Ron knows the fabulous positive impact that our children have had on us and those around us. And to see somebody else stand up and say, yeah, you're right, because in our society, and I don't know if it's just Oregon or just the Northwest, but most people don't support that view. They don't until they actually come in contact with a kid like Eli, or a family like the Kerrs, or a family like Ron's, and then we have kids that call us, 16-year-old boys that have helped coach Eli, that call and say, "Can I come up and go swimming with him?" And the rest of my kids aren't even home. Can we babysit him? You know, it's phenomenal, the impact that he's having. So, yeah, it's indescribable, the impact that she had. You know, let me give you a little bit of background on the group. I talked about the Basket of Hope program. My wife, Renee, met a woman named Paula, whose child, Megan, was born 3 months after Eli. And a neighbor put the two of them together. And they got together and went to lunch, and they just cried. For a number of reasons. One of them being that they were just so happy to find somebody that they could talk to that was in the same boat. And pretty soon that was the last time they cried, because all they do is laugh and drink wine now, I think. But pretty soon there were 3 of them. Pretty soon there were 4 of them. Pretty soon there were 5 of them. Pretty soon there were 10 of them. Pretty soon there were 20 of them. And after about 2 years, they decided to do a little buddy walk out in Lake Oswego. Buddy walk is a thing that's done every October all over the nation. October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month. It's either September or October. We actually do ours in September now, because typically the weather's a little better. But they organized a little buddy walk out in Lake Oswego, and 70 people showed up. It was awesome. We marched around George Rogers Park, and I think we raised $150. The next year there were 300 people. And last year there were 1,000 people. And we raised $40,000, something like that. $50,000. So, and now we do mom's coffees, we do dad's dinners, we do athletic programs. We're doing Challenger soccer, Challenger basketball, Challenger this, Challenger that. Anyway, it's awesome. Any other questions? Let me just tell you, I think I saw an African-American gentleman come in here. Is that right? Yeah. Eli doesn't see whether you're white, black, or different. Well, actually he does. He sees that you're African-American and your skin's different color. And I pick on you because it's easy to talk about his first experience of that African-American gentleman. He walked right up and he went, "Wow, what's that?" He wanted to touch your skin. He walked right up, and in my hair's a little longer, and when I had a little more of it, it was a pretty good little afro too. So, but we were in Dornbecker the other day, and there was a woman there in a wheelchair that had a big patch over her eye. And my wife and I walked right on by, and he stopped. He said, "Mom, Dad, come here. Look at that." And he just cuts through all the BS of life You know, if it's different, he points it out. If it's not, and in some ways, it's so refreshing. In other ways, it's so humbling because you can't be. You got to lose your persona. You got to lose the fact that you're a cool guy. I mean, whether I'm a 60-year-old or a 20-year-old, I still think I'm a cool guy. When I went to Eli, I'm Eli's dad, and he can put me in the most embarrassing situations you've ever seen in your life. And it makes you real. It makes you real. You become, because you got to lose all the BS. You're a real person, whether you like it or not. So, thank you very much. Appreciated sharing this with you.